host, Kelly Springer. Kelly, how are you? And I know you're excited about our guest today.
I am so excited. I love meeting new people, and I don't know anything about his story yet. So just reading the bio, I cannot wait. So in this episode, we're going to sit down with Nizar Ladak, author of Power of Scars, a journey from refugee to CEO, from fleeing from Uganda to leading in the highest levels of corporate in Canada. It's just an incredible story that I cannot wait to see. So he shares how the deepest scars can become a very source of strength that we need to thrive both personally and professionally. And I couldn't agree with you more. So welcome to the show. How are you? Tell us all about you and how this came to be.
For sure. Thank you so much, first of all, to both you and Neil for having me on the show. A little bit about myself. I've done a variety of things over my career, various senior roles throughout the career, largely in healthcare in Canada, as well as in academic and universities. And my last two organizations, I was the chief executive officer. Most of these organizations invest in technology to help make the newest discoveries. How are we going to solve dementia, heart disease, cancer, or discover new galaxies? And I was the chief executive there. Maybe I'll pause there and see if you have another question.
No, I definitely, do you always think, did you have that entrepreneur CEO mindset growing up? Always?
No, actually, I didn't. I thought I was going to be a professor. I wasn't very good in school, and yet I had this level of learning that developed when I went to university. And I did my graduate degrees, did my postdoctoral work, and thought I was going to be a professor. But then I got my first job, like many people, and it was in the hospital working with children. And my heart immediately knew that was the right direction for me. And as I did various roles throughout my career, there was always this sort of, I wasn't trained in technology, but I tended to gravitate towards solutions that businesses were facing through a technology lens. And that made me valuable. And so I had a knack for leadership and then continued to lean into that and push it forward.
All right, let's talk about the leadership things that came up. I did a podcast recently and the host said to me, how are you in leadership? And I said, I'm terrible. I'm a doer. I just want people. So let's dive into the leadership side. I know we were probably going to go this way originally, but I want to get, if I could pick your brain, what are some ways that we can do better?
I think there's leadership in all of us, right? I think the way we define leadership, maybe the way I define leadership is being able to see in people their capacity, their potential, and then finding ways to pull it out. And like you, Kelly, you said at the beginning, you love meeting new people. I share the same feel, right? I love meeting new people. And there's this enormous intrinsic joy when I work with people and they respond to me and I respond to them, and I can see the sort of wheels turning as I propose ideas, and you can see them getting excited about things. To me, that's leadership, is seeing in people what they perhaps don't see within themselves and finding the right way in order to pull those qualities out of them. It was something I gravitated towards. I started studying it at university. I taught leadership courses in business school. And over the course of my career, whenever I was faced with issues, I would look at things and I would listen to some of the greats, Jack Welch from GE, or recently Steve Jobs and folks like that, and Reed Hastings of Netflix. All of these folks, I admired them and I read all about them. And then at a certain point in time, I thought to myself, something Steve Jobs said at his Stanford commencement when he was speaking, and he said, if you don't love your job, if you have to really love it. And I believe in that advice. And yet the pragmatist in me said, I've got a wife, I've got two kids. We don't all have the opportunities that Steve Jobs has to be able to say, if you don't love it, leave. We've got bills to pay. We've got all these kinds of things. And one of the gaps that I saw in the leadership literature, having read hundreds of books, was a book that was just written by an ordinary Joe like me. Someone who has relationship challenges with marriage, kids to raise, bills to pay, mortgages to do, and still finding within that how to exercise your leadership in various organizations and still recognizing the pragmatics of our everyday lives. And you would see me on assembly, you wouldn't think twice to look at me. And so I wanted to have something that was there in the leadership literature that talked about my lessons. Also, speaking as a person of color, I think the current term is a racialized individual. There are very few of us in senior leadership positions. In Fortune 500 companies, there's probably less than 500 Fortune 500 companies, right? I thought there was a voice that I needed to contribute to that information.
And why do you think it is? Sorry, Kelly.
No, go, Neil.
No, why do you think that is? That there are not the amount of people of color in those leadership positions in the C-suite, especially for 500 companies?
I've thought about it, and I can't say I would have peer-reviewed journal evidence to be able to point to the fact, but it's a lot of psychology, to be honest, Neil. People like to work with people they're comfortable with. and we surround ourselves with teams that we're with like-minded individuals. It's been the source of, I think, there's nothing wrong with it, but it's a missed opportunity, right? So this is why women are not well represented in senior C-suite roles. Men have been in those roles and they tend to relate to other men. Individuals of a certain ethnic may be seen as different and different backgrounds, different experiences. And I don't know if it's as much a conscious, deliberate action that has resulted in it, but I do know it is a conscious, deliberate action that will change it, right? And so when we consciously say to ourselves, we need more gender representation on senior roles for women, we need more representation. And I've shown both through my career, but also through my study, that actually companies benefit when you have a C-suite or an executive team that represents your audience, your customer base. You actually have the insights and the knowledge and the experience to be able to market your products or services in a more effective way. And I think the changes that we've seen through things like equity, diversity, and inclusion, whatever various people feel about it, I think there's a good element to it because it's at least raising our consciousness towards how can we improve our company's bottom line and also elevating people who perhaps are ignored.
What are you going to say, Neil? Your brain's going. I think it's interesting as a female of being at the table and getting to the table has been interesting for sure. There was a little while there, probably about 4 years ago now, you gotta say, that I really thought that I needed to bring a man on my team. That classic white male. I really thought that I needed it to grow my business, and I ended up going completely sideways. It was a disaster. It was completely the wrong person. And maybe it would have been great if it was someone different, but it was seriously a disaster. And it was one of those moments I'm like, okay, you don't need the white male to make this successful. But it was in my brain because I'm like, he can then sit down with the people, like you said, he's relatable to them. They trust him where I couldn't even get in the room.
And I think I would jump into that. I think, Kelly, it's the finding the right person. When we go into the whole process, it's more about the right person versus skin color and the ethnicity, anything. Because ultimately, it's the people that are going to willing to work for that company, are going to work hard, are going to be dedicated, and pretty much put themselves, the company, before themselves when you're looking at C-suite positions, especially in Fortune 500 companies. And to find those people in an interview process or see it, sometimes you can't see it. You can't see it till it happens. One of the biggest challenges, Alex Hormozi talks about this in scaling a company, and I'm in scaling phase again, is you have to take the risk of hiring new people, but yet working as hard or even harder as a founder at that time period. And if you don't do that, if that person fails and you didn't pick up the slack, your business fails. Can you add to that?
Yeah, I absolutely can. I've done 4 startups in my life. And as when we were talking just prior to starting the interview, you got to give it your all. We're working 14-hour days is a common expectation, right? You're putting your life into the, and so when you hire people, you tend to naturally expect that they're going to commit to it in the same way that you, but it's not the same for everyone. So I agree with you, Neil, in the sense that you got to find people who you're going to spend a lot of time with, who both are similar in your views, but also have the sort of tenacity to challenge your views as a founder and to be able to do that. What I've learned over my career, and I should preface this by saying I married my university sweetheart. We have 2 daughters. My mother-in-law lives with me. Even the cat that I adopted is a female. Oh, what I've observed is that for men, skin color or otherwise, there are things that we don't even think about that women have to. Kelly talked about the fact that there were doors that weren't open to her. And the glass ceiling that many women in our society faced is real. My wife has faced it. My children face it. Right? And so it's sad that Kelly even had to think that she had to bring on a male who was more relatable to her customer base or to the people that she was going to market her services to in order to be able to open the door. That would never have happened to you or I. We would have never said, oh, I think I have to have a woman who helps me open the door to various opportunities. And so I think what I'm trying to do is through my book, through the things that I've learned over my career is raise those examples. I was raised by a single mother and I have 2 older sisters, and I just described my current situation. So I always say to my friends, I was raised by 3 women. I'm going to die with 3 women. And so I think I've been given the lens into the certain decisions that they make, or the stereotypes and the certain perceptions. When Kelly, if she wasn't an entrepreneur and she was applying for jobs at a certain age, they'd be like, is she going to be around or is she going to get pregnant? Why would that even matter to you in making that decision? Some would say, of course it should matter, Nizar. She may not be here for 6 months or 5 months. But the fact is what Neil said is hire the right person. Don't worry about their demographic or their particular stage of life. If Kelly's got the tenacity to work and the ideas and the thing, that's what you need to hire for.
100%.
That's where I think just raising people's awareness about the particular biases she may face or I may face as a person of color, I think is long overdue, I think, in some regards.
Wow.
What are you doing now? What does your day-to-day look like now?
So I wrote a book, as I shared. I also volunteer on a couple of boards because about 7 or 8 months ago, my wife retired and I was trying to decide whether to do the same. And I'm not a golfer. Like I'm a golfer, but I'm a terrible golfer. So I couldn't see myself doing that every day. And I'm in my mid-50s, right? And I grew up always thinking about Freedom 55 and the benefits of doing that. I'm a diligent saver. So financially I could do it. But I also felt I still had a lot to give and I still had a lot to want to contribute. And so through writing, teaching, being on boards, that's been a wonderful opportunity. And it still gives me the opportunity to travel with my wife and see the world. So it's a blessing.
I think being on boards, that's really a cool thing because then you bring success to that board. It's going to financially help be part of that early retirement, but also gets you to still have that entrepreneur mindset, not disappear completely. Congratulations on that. Now, Kelly, when you talk about growing your company, because we're sharing this stuff, and I think it's really important for business owners to listen to this because it's such great advice. The scaling is such a challenging, scary thing. Isn't it, Kelly?
Neil, I think it's interesting. So I walked with my best friend yesterday and she owns a design company. She does all closets and it's a great company. And she said, I think I'm going to grow it. This is our conversation as we're walking yesterday. And she said, I think I can get this bridge money and this. And I go, don't do it. I said, growth does not equal more money.
Amen.
Growth does not equal more money. I'm like, repeat after me. Growth does not equal more money. And I said, you are going to take out that loan. You're going to have to pay that money back. And I'm like, and she said, I needed to hear this message. And I said, you are good where you are right now. You are a one-woman show. You're having contractors. They're 1099. You are able to control what's going on. The moment you take that loan out, the moment you start in that growth mode, you are going to be in this spiral. And I literally am living it right now. So it's been great. And for me, I'm so grateful that I did scale and that I am going to it. But for 3 years, I didn't get a paycheck, right? Like I put everyone before myself and it's really rough. It's tough and it's hard. Almost that made me a worse leader because then I'm expecting everyone to just really give because I'm paying them. All my work is going right to them. And so their work ethic is even more personal, which it shouldn't be, but it became that of where I was financially.
The blueprint, right? Is there a blueprint for an entrepreneur? If we hired you with wood and brought you in as a consultant, is there a blueprint or do you believe there's not a one size fits all business? What are your thoughts?
Absolutely. I think for everyone, it's a little different. Kelly gave the right advice to her friend based on where her stage of business was. And yet if she had a board, boards typically would say, if you're not growing, you're stagnant. And so you respond to stuff like that. And yet for the stage in business where she is, I think Kelly, not knowing much about what she's doing, I think she gave her the right advice, which is grow it at your own pace. Find your comfort when you have that sort of urge or that motivation or founder insight to want to take the next evolution. You'll know in your gut that I can handle more now, as opposed to just doing it simply because it's the expectation from a board or from others to say, you got to double your revenues in 6 months or a year. It's painful. It's tough. And so I think when I'm on boards now, as I share that with folks. It's growth comes when the organization has the capacity to do. Pushing it too quickly can actually result in a downturn because the organization's not ready. But when everyone's relatively comfortable, then you need that little nudge to say, we don't want comfort to turn into complacency, but we don't want so much risk that we're jeopardizing the organization's future. So it's that sort of just right balance that entrepreneurs learn over time, and they know intrinsically, yeah, I'm ready, or no, I'm not ready. And so I don't think there's a blueprint when I say trust your instincts, because you obviously had good instincts to be able to start the company in the first place.
And have success. So Kelly, I'm going to ask this question to you because this is such a great conversation. Think about specifically enough what you learned in this experience and saw in this experience and how you can be a great mentor to other people in this experience. And I wish that there was a lot. I didn't go to business school. I know you didn't go to business school either. And we're learning in the school of hard knocks. Yeah, okay. And that's saying, and then we say now, and that's where I recommend any entrepreneur to listen to podcasts like this one when you have an opportunity to hear from someone who had the success. And listen to Kelly and I who hit that, because a lot of times people think, okay, now I've got my team, I don't have to do as much work. That's absolutely incorrect. And then if they think that an entrepreneur only works a 3-day work week, I would love to know that one until you're in the position that Nizar was in. Then, yes, guess what? You can do that. You can have the free because you're on boards and you don't have to show up. You don't have to work that long day. So I think we have to be truthful with people once you have this a business owner or entrepreneur. This is what you're going to do. This is how your blood, sweat, and tears comes. Kelly, my question to you is, your husband, again, in the medical field, how does it, as a doctor, understand, he has long hours. How does he understand about your long hours as an entrepreneur?
Well, it's interesting. So he is 61 and he is ready to retire. However, our 2 girls are in college and I don't want him to watch this podcast. If you're not happy, quit. But every day I'm like, you can do it. You can do it. So it is interesting. He is driving an hour to and from work right now, which has really been affecting him more than it ever has in the last couple of months. And just those 2 hours that he can't get back. He can't work out during those 2 hours. He can't really walk with a dog. He can't do these different things that he wants to do. And there does need to be a balance there. And I'm really hoping to get him into a CMO position, which is remote. I'm helping him to do some remote patient monitoring with our company. So, anyone watching, if you have any of those opportunities, he's fantastic. He does a lot with law review now. So he goes in and he's a medical witness for the groups. So he's looking at the little side hustle jobs that he can do during retirement. It's interesting because, like you said, we were talking about women versus male. So just this morning, he gets up, he leaves. I wake up, I do 2 loads of laundry. I unload the dishwasher. I get the mail from the front porch. And I take the dog out, I feed the cats, I run 4 miles, and I'm still at work starting the day at 9. And I'm thinking in the back of my head, do we have the right toilet paper? Is there shampoo in the thing? Is the renter happy? And I'm literally juggling our entire life, and he's going to work.
Yeah. And that's very much a female's life. Right? When I talk about my experiences as a refugee and watching my mother trying to support her children, my father passed away when I was very young. And at the age of mid-40s, my mom had to raise 3 kids. And when I went to business school and I learned about multitasking, I'm like, have you met my mother? We invented multitasking. Not only did she do a full-time job, she raised 3 kids, take care of homework, made the meals at night, made sure lunches were made, homework was done, and showers and everything else with them. There are things that I think we can, so I share that partly because as we're talking about entrepreneur, you don't get to turn it off. You never turn it off, right? You're always thinking about the next thing. It's always going. So if you have that entrepreneurial spirit, you'll know, because it's self-motivating to be able to push and to see something spring from nothing. And for those who are not entrepreneurial, but wish to aspire or move to leadership positions, I always say, look at your experiences. And that's the theme of my book, where there are things that a self-reflective mind starts to teach you. People have asked me in other interviews, why were you a successful CEO? And I'm like, because I treated the budget like it was my own, whether it was my organization personally or whether I was the hired CEO. And I learned as a refugee arriving in the country how to pinch pennies, right? And I'm very fiscally conservative when it comes to the organization's budget, but I also know where I can find opportunities, right? Joke about things like immigrant mothers would have solved the climate crisis simply because they did so through things like reusing paper bags or reusing plastic bags, yogurt containers as storage things, all these kinds of things that they did out of necessity. And if we had turned over the climate crisis, we would have been recycling decades ago and composting and reusing because they didn't throw anything away. And so it's that mentality, I think, when I look at our budget for the organization, I'm like, this is not how I would spend my money. So why would I do differently in the organization? So I guess the lesson there is that people should aspire and think about their experiences. I don't have I got to go to business school. I don't know. Sometimes the school of hard knocks is just like you and Neil went through, is the right sort of recipe to understanding what does it take to succeed in a company.
Where do you live?
I live in Toronto, Ontario, in Canada. And we arrived here, as Neil shared, or as you shared in the introduction, where we were kicked out of my birth country. I was born in Kampala in Uganda, which is in East Africa. And in the early 70s, there was a dictator who took over and stripped us all of our citizenship and birthrights and said, leave. And so my family and I, two sisters, my mother and father, we went to a refugee camp in a small Mediterranean country in Malta until Canada opened up its borders. And then we have arrived, and it's been about 53 years for me. So I did all my schooling and work experiences. And that's also the reason I share about in the book is that people look at you and they look at Neil and they look at me and they say, oh, that's a successful person. They must have had easy opportunities to be able to make it. They have generational wealth. Heck no. We worked our asses off. We worked our butts off.
Yeah.
And so I think it's part of the reason is not to self-promote it at all. I want to be very humble about it. It was to be able to say, you too can do it. And here are some of the lessons I learned.
I agree. This has been amazing. You are an awesome person. I would love to get you involved in our advisory board. We just started a nonprofit. So we just had our board meeting last night. Our first get together, our nonprofit, our little nonprofit that could is actually taking off in a big way, which I didn't even tell you, Neil. It's crazy. There's just so much happening. Thanks. It's emotional and overwhelming because I've been trying to do this for 20 years. And the fact that it's finally coming together and now having a daughter going into my field and how it's all just coming, it really is an overwhelmingly good feeling, but also like I almost cried last night because I'm like, this is so crazy that we have this board and people and we're doing work and we're getting after school districts and the community and the work that we've been able to do. It really is a really cool time. So I would love to speak with you afterwards because you need another board, I think. I
like he needs to be doing this 14-hour days again. I'm sure I made that, but there you go. So best place we can pick up your book. Where can we give us the whole time?
Anywhere. It's available on Amazon. It's at Barnes and Noble. Anywhere you want to, anywhere books are sold. Yeah. Maybe in parting, I know we're probably getting to time, but what I would say to Kelly is that what you demonstrated by virtue of spending 20 years to get your not-for-profit off the ground is surprising. It's the theme of my book, which I didn't even mention, and that's resilience. You didn't let go. You knew in your heart this was something that was needed. This was something that I needed to do. And so people like you and Neil and I think we have resilience innate, or we've learned about it. And so the other thing that I talk about in my book is that resilience can be taught. And I speak about the sort of qualities that you can engender in order to be able to achieve resilience. And so I hope your readers will find it, or your watchers will find it interesting.
I can't wait to read it. It's going to help me, I'm sure, in so many ways. And we're learning every day. But yes, resiliency is a big piece of entrepreneurship.
All right. And we can pick up Kelly's book really easily. Tell us about your book.
Yeah. So the new weight loss era, all about your GP1 medications and how you partner that with nutrition. Really excited for that. Called right on Amazon, New Weight Loss Era. You can look me up and get the book, learn more.
All right. That was awesome.
Thank you so much. Have a great day. I appreciate it.
All right. That was a special simulcast of the Haley Show and Talk Nutrition to Me with Kelly Springer. Guys.